Good morning, everyone. My name is Byron K. Ward, and I'm here to welcome you to Byron K. Ward Presents Business Leadership with Action. And we are thrilled to bring exemplary business leaders to share their life journeys with our audience. Most of these stories are from men and women of color, especially highlighting examples of business excellence from African Americans. So sit back and enjoy today's positive story of success, leadership, money, and inspiration. And I am so excited today to host this timely, exclusive interview with Dr. Sevet Johnson. It is fortuitous timing indeed, because this is my opportunity to introduce the new Chief Executive Officer for the County of Ventura to our listeners and our viewers. And before we bring her on, this assignment for her, I want to frame this in the proper perspective. This makes her the highest ranking and most powerful African American ever elected or appointed in the history of Ventura County. That's 150 years. So as she trades her interim title, the role continues her responsibility for managing for over 845 residents of Ventura County and over 4,500 employees and over $2.5 billion. I'm going to say that again. $2.5 billion. It is such a great opportunity to have you here on the show today. It has obviously been a huge week for you and your family. Welcome, Dr. Johnson.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Ward. I want to say good morning to you and to all your viewers and listeners, and thank you for having me here today. And I know we have a schedule, but when you do an opening like that, I have to respond. It is a very, very special time. I'll say this is the first interview that I'm doing after being appointed as the permanent CEO. So this is very special to me to be here with you this morning. And more than that, being able to oversee a budget of $2.7 billion, county has over 10,000 staff, 27 agencies. It is a large machine. It really is. And the thing that keeps coming to my mind, I was raised by my grandparents, and I have a t-shirt and it says, "I am my ancestors' wildest dreams." And literally, that's all I can think about, because my heart is full, because I recognize the moment and I literally stand on the shoulders of giants. And I don't take that lightly. So thank you for having me. Thank you for recognizing how significant this is, not just for me, but for my community, those who have come before me, those who have paved the way for me, because I didn't do this on my own, right?
No doubt.
I did this because of the work that people have been doing for generations, right? So thank you for acknowledging that, because it's so very important to just the core of who I am.
And I'm sure that, as you have stated, that you recognize the significance. Certainly it's going to be a challenge and a heavy load for you. But we'll get a chance to talk about that role a little later in the show. But we like to start at the beginning. This is your life's journey. So tell us about Sevet, the young child, and growing up in the city of
Compton.
Compton, California.
Yeah. So, born in Long Beach Memorial Hospital, but was raised in Compton, and I was raised by my grandparents. And usually when I say that, people like automatically assume that my parents weren't in my life, but that's not my reality. My parents separated shortly after I was born, so I had a single mother. She was a registered nurse, and most people know nurses, they work crazy hours, right? So she worked a knock shift overnight. So that's how I ended up literally being raised by my grandparents. But like my mother literally drove me from Compton to Orange County every day to go to school. So it wasn't that my parents weren't in my life. It was just because of circumstances and having to work to provide for me and my sister. I have a sister who's 8 years older than I. We stayed with our grandparents. And so my grandparents were extremely influential in my life. I would not be the person I am today without them. My grandfather was a Baptist pastor, and he founded a church in Compton. They called it the Pink Church on the corner. It's still there. My uncle's the pastor now. And my grandmother, she was a housewife. She was a pastor's wife. And so that meant that she cared for the sick and shut-in. She cared for the kids. She did the homeless food outreach and the food banks. You know, I was raised in a community, a very tight-knit community. And I often tell people that I didn't even know we were poor until I grew up and went to high school and college, because I was so surrounded by love and community and people that I grew up with that, I didn't want for anything. You couldn't have told me I was poor when I was young. I wouldn't have believed you, because I had everything I needed, and I was loved every single day of my life. And it was amazing. I grew up in the church. I was at church every day, at least from up until 16, I was in church every day. And people think I exaggerate when I say that, but I kid you not. I was in church all day Sunday, 8 o'clock service, Sunday school, 11 o'clock service, 3:30 afternoon, and then 6:15 Bible study or communion every Sunday. And then Monday, Tuesday, of course, Wednesday you got Bible study, you got women's fellowship one night, men's fellowship another night, you had choir rehearsal on Thursday nights, then you have Friday night youth group, and then Saturday was a whole nother day of, I literally was in church every day of my life up until 16. And for me, that's just the core of who I am, because that's all I knew for so long.
Yeah, that sounds like Church of God in Christ. Or
I was Baptist. We're just Southern Baptist,
okay.
Right? But
okay,
we were there.
Yes,
every day.
It happens in the Baptist church as well.
Yeah.
So church every day. So what were some of your interests as a child?
Well, it's weird. I didn't do I have kids now, and they're in Girl Scouts and they play sports. I didn't do that. I was in church. That was my life.
Okay.
I mean, literally, extracurricular. My aunt was a musician, so she taught music lessons. So I learned the piano, I played the accordion, I played the flute, I played the violin. So they were big on pushing the arts, but my aunt was my teacher, and at school was my teacher. But I didn't literally, I was in church. It wasn't oh, you're going to go over here, and I went to church. That was it.
Well, tell us about your experiences at school.
School was interesting because, like I said before, I went to school in Orange County. So I didn't go to school with anyone I was growing up with.
Really?
My mother was very adamant that, I want you to be prepared to excel in life. And so literally she picked me up from my grandmother's house in Compton every day and drove out to Orange County. And it was hard because I was the only black kid there.
Wow.
There was literally, I had one friend. She was Indian, and her name was Karishma. And I'll never forget her. That was my friend.
What grade?
This was first, second grade.
Okay.
I was there till at least fourth grade. I was at this school, this private school. And she was my friend. She was brown like me. She didn't have hair like I had, but she was brown like me. And that was my friend. That was my only friend.
Wow.
And that was my life until fifth grade. I begged and pleaded and begged and pleaded. I was like, I just want to go to a regular school.
Mm-hmm.
And so she enrolled me in a regular public school in my community. And that's, where I started seeing people that looked like me. I'll never forget, I had a teacher in the sixth grade. Her name was Ruby McIntosh. And she was a black woman. and she loved me. She saw me. And I can't even explain what or why she saw me, but she did. And when I tell you she loved me, and she was what I needed at that time. Because I had my grandmother, but my grandmother was much older. Mm-hmm. And my mom was always working. So I didn't have like a mom there every day, right? Because she was working. She was making sure that I had everything I needed financially so that my grandparents could take care of me. And so this teacher, I kid you not, I would go to her house on the weekend sometimes during Christmas break. I knew her whole family. She would come over, talk to my grandmother. She had permission, and she loved me. And that was, for me, so critical at that time in my life. And it planted a seed. And it was really of, always give back, because representation matters.
It takes a village.
It takes a village, but you need to see people who look like you.
Yes.
To know that you can do that, to understand that, there's a whole world out there and you can be capable of anything, but you need to see models that look like you to understand, oh yeah, I can do that.
Outstanding.
So that planted that seed in 6th grade, because that's when I met her. And so 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was at that same school and we remained very, very close. And so that was a critical juncture for my life, having that teacher, that mentor, that person who just saw me and who just loved me and who took me under her wings and encouraged me, like, you do anything you want to do. You can do it.
Tell us her name again.
Her name is Ruby McIntosh. She's still alive. I'm still in touch with her.
This is a shout out to you, Ruby McIntosh. You mentored the current chief executive officer of the County of Ventura.
Yeah.
Does she know that?
I haven't, this has been a whirlwind of a week. So I don't even think I've digested everything that's really happened, because I was worked to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then today I woke up and I came here. So I haven't had time to just sit at all yet. And I need to do that, and I will, but I haven't done that yet.
You need to let it sink in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Now, did you have a subject area that you were interested in as a youth in terms of school? So
I have always loved to read, and I don't know what it is, but I can get lost in a book and do nothing but read a book all day. I read a lot of books. I mean, it's pretty crazy. I read a lot of books. So English has always fascinated me, just the English language and how you can arrange things and create poetry and just prose. And so I've always just loved English. I majored in English, actually. I went to UMass Boston.
Yes.
I majored in English and Africana Studies because I know I wanted to help people. That's something I knew early on. I want to help people, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what that would look like, and that's really evolved over time. But initially, I thought, I'm going to be an English teacher. And so that's why I majored in English. And of course, I knew from the start I wanted to be able to give back to youth that look like me. I wanted to be able to teach them about their history and our very rich history that often, we don't learn about. Yeah. And so I minored in Africana Studies because I wanted to understand the royalty that we came from, so that I can give that back and I can teach our youth that. And so I thought I was going to be a teacher. Okay. That's what I thought.
What a transition from aspiring to be a teacher to becoming a public administrator at the highest level. Mm-hmm. And we're going to get back to that, but I want to touch on one more thing before we go on a break. Tell us about your high school briefly. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Long Beach, Jordan. I went to Jordan High School. What's funny about my high school is that I joined the choir. Okay. And it was, I didn't know what I was getting into, honestly, but it ended up being like a gospel choir. And so, it was like home for me. It was like home. And, like band and choir, that's kind of something, it's not just something you do for one period. You go there at lunch, you go there nutrition break, you're there after school, before school, you're going to events. So it becomes like this whole family, this whole community where you're nourished. And so high school was fun because I did that. I was a cheerleader. So I was at all the basketball games, all the football games. I still have, one of my friends that I cheered with, we are still like extremely close. And so I built some relationships that I still have to this day from high school. High school was fun. I was at public school, of course. So I was so happy. I was in, they called it, I don't know what they call it anymore, but it was like a gifted program where you take college classes in high school. So by the time I finished high
College
school,
prep, maybe?
yeah,
Or
but they had a name for it. I can't remember what it was.
Here in this area, there's a program called AVID that
Yeah.
prepares kids for college.
I can't remember what it was called, but by the time I finished high school, I had completed almost a year in college courses
okay.
already.
So you were a fast tracker.
Yeah, I was a fast tracker. I got bored easily, so it was like I had to be challenged. And I was testing out, but my mother wouldn't let them skip me because she was like, no, I wanted to stay with her peer
Okay.
group. And so I did the advanced courses.
Okay, before we give you a breath, now let's go back to cheerleading.
Yeah.
So you did all the flipping and all the gymnastics.
It was fun.
And dance
Yeah.
all those things.
Yeah, we had a dance team. So I wasn't the dance team, but we were cheer. We did the pyramids and we did the high kicks and the splits and marched with the band. It was fun.
All
It was a lot
right,
of
y'all
fun.
hear that, Ventura County and beyond? The CEO was a cheerleader. All
in the
right,
day.
we're going to take a quick break here, and we have an announcement for Oxnard and the Central Coast. We want you to join Community Advocacy Coalition 99.3 FM and Oxnard College for our biggest fundraising event of the year. The Greg Ward Studio Naming and Benefit Concert is on November 12th at 3 o'clock p.m. Tickets are on sale now at 99threefmconcert.ticketsauce.com, and that's TICKETSAUCE.com. Don't miss the concert of the year, featuring performances by local artists including House Arrest Band, Fundi Lejean, Cedric Ross, First Lady Danielle Keys, E. Smooth, Jazzy, Floyd DJ Events, and many others. And our host for the evening will be the lovely Sade Champagne. So that's 993 FM's largest fundraiser of the year. Don't miss it. Tickets on sale now. 99THREEFMCONCERTTICKETSAUCE.com. Come out and support CAC and 99.3. So I'm Byron Ward, and we're here with the newly appointed CEO for the County of Ventura, Dr. Sevet Johnson. And she shared with us a little bit of her early years, and she touched on her education a bit. But tell us about how you subsequently earned your PhD.
So I grew up in Southern California, and I wanted to experience the seasons because we don't have seasons out here, right? It's beautiful weather all the time, and I love that. But I wanted to experience the seasons, and so I started researching, and I'm like, I want to move to the East Coast, Boston. And my mother was like, absolutely not happening. You've never been away from home. You can't be in this big city by yourself. No. So I don't know what got into me, and I don't even know how I came up with this plan, but I came up with the plan. And during this time, you know how they let the military recruiters on the school campuses during high school to do the ASVAB test to, get your abilities in the military and match you up? They were doing that. And so I was like, my friends were taking the test. I was like, I'm going to take the test just because. Why not? I like to take tests. I'm good. So I took the test. I don't know. I like to learn. I like stuff like that. But so I did it. And I guess, I don't know what happened, but the recruiter contacted me. And so my mom is like, what did you took, what, military, what? And I was like, I just took it, I don't know. And then I just started talking to the recruiter, and they just started talking about, like, these are the opportunities, the military can provide you. And I don't know, I was like, I wanted to move to Boston. My mom would not let me. She was adamant, no. And I knew that I wanted something more. And I didn't feel like being in this comfortable, cozy village that I had been raised in, that I could do that. And so we went back and forth, and it was like sort of like a bet. And it was like, okay, because I was 17. I wasn't 18, so I could not sign papers for myself to join the military. She had to sign the papers.
Right.
And she was like, no. And I was saying, okay, look, if I can get through boot camp, if I can do boot camp, then you have to let me move to Boston to go to school. And because I was going to join the National Guard, so it wasn't going to be full-time, right? It was going to be like the weekend drilling. And if I can get through boot camp, then you have to let me move to Boston. And I guess she was probably like, okay, fine. Because she, in her head, I mean, I wasn't even 100 pounds, okay? So in her head, I'm sure she was like, you are never going to make it through boot camp. So like, okay, let's do this. So she signed the papers. I was still 17. And as soon as I graduated in June. I think it was like July 3rd or something. 17 years old, I shipped to go to boot camp. Went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I didn't know about Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, but I learned.
Okay.
I learned. And that was interesting.
Tell us about that.
It was charged. I mean, it was charged, racially charged, and it was a different world. Now, boot camp was boot camp in itself, and I'm a rule follower. I like to learn, so I kind of like boot camp. And I know that sounds really crazy. I got in trouble because I used to laugh all the time. And I don't know what it was like, because they'd be hollering at people and dropping, and it was just funny to me, like, why are they being so obnoxious? And so I would laugh, and they'd be like, Hollywood, get down, because they called me Hollywood because I was always smiling. They knew I was from California. So I was so buff, and they like gave me, because I was under 100 pounds, so they had to like pump me up with food and all kinds of stuff to get me. So I was like 130 pounds. I had muscles. I had a six-pack. I was built. I mean, my mom came and saw me. They were like, what did they do to you? And I'm like G.I. Jane, like I can do anything, right? So got through boot camp, went to Atlanta for advanced training, got through that. Again, I like to learn. I like, it's like that was my thing. I was good with that. Came back and I'm like, okay, I did it. Gotta go. And she was like, I can't believe you did it, but I'm so proud of you, and okay. And I went to Boston.
Outstanding. Well, having been in the military and gone through that, I kind of had a similar experience. But this isn't about me. But I enjoyed my my boot camp as well. So take us to your PhD, and before we go too deep into your business career, tell us about your family now. You said you have 2 children.
I do. And now I don't talk about my family a lot because, I'm a very private person, but I am married. I live in Moore Park. I have 2 daughters. They're 8 and a half, and 11. And they're amazing. My family, they are my biggest supporter. I can have a crazy day. I can have a challenging day. I can have a hard month. And literally, I go home and I'm on the couch and I'm mom. Mm-hmm. I'm mom. That's it. And that's all that matters. They are just a joy. My husband is a huge supporter. And I could be a better wife, I'm sure.
Share their names.
I don't share my kids' names just because with social media and schools and, your
husband?
Myron, which is funny because you're Byron.
Yes, okay. Byron Johnson.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So how's the experience being a resident of Moore Park?
I like Moore Park. I lived in Kent. When I commuted, when I started working with the county, and you know what, I'm sorry. Let me go back to it really quick because you said, how did I get to my degree? So I went to UMass Boston, got a bachelor's in English, minored in Africana Studies. I did that in about 2.5 years because I had already had a year in credits, and then I just worked.
Right.
I just worked. I petitioned my dean every semester to go over the max credits, and I was focused. I was rushing to get back because, remember, I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandmother was ill, and I needed to come back to be here when she transitioned. So that was my rush there. Came back, Went to Pepperdine Graduate School of Education and Psychology, got a master's in marriage and family therapy there. During that time, my grandmother passed away. Then I said, you know what? I started working in the field, doing my hours. You have to do like 3,000 hours before you can get licensed. Worked at Magic Johnson School-Based Health Clinic in Watts. Loved it. Great experience. Wild, but great experience. Went for my doctorate. I started off in a PhD program, which is research-based. And then, because I was working, remember, I was working doing clinical services and realized I want more of the practitioner model. So ended up getting the PsyD, which is more focused on clinical work. And during that time, while I was getting my PsyD, my grandfather passed. So It was, every stage is monumental because there's something that goes on. And graduated in 2009. No one was hiring, right? Because that's, everything fell through. And had a friend who said, come out here that I went to my doctoral program with, come to Ventura, they're hiring. And I'm like, Ventura is so far away, I lived in Lakewood. I'm like, that's really far. All my family's here. And so I didn't initially. When I finally came around to applying in Ventura, they didn't have any doctoral positions. I took a position that was a master's level, actually.
Wow. Yeah.
And worked for a year or two at that level before I could get a doctoral position.
In what agency?
Ventura County Behavioral Health. So I started in behavioral health. And so I've been in behavioral health. I promoted. I started school-based counseling in the different schools. A lot of schools in Oxnard I work with Dr. Morales when he was in Oxnard. And then I just moved up and went to clinic manager, a regional manager, a senior manager. Then, I don't know how it happened, became the director of the department. It was never in my plans, I promise you. All of a sudden, overnight, I was over 700 employees, had a budget of about $250 million. And I did what I naturally do. I dug in, right? I was meeting with the CFO regularly saying, I want to understand every ounce of this budget. Because, the budget is the biggest thing. The budget, that dictates everything else. Who's holding the purse strings and where are those funds going? Because that dictates what I can do. So that was my focus. It was not about, I got the clinical skills, I have the people skills, I got the relational skills, organizational leadership, good. Let's focus on what my weakness was, and that was finance and understanding this budget and how to drill down and how are we looking at leveraging funds, maximizing that, unencumbered. Where are those funds going? How were we giving money back to the state? If so, why? What does that look like? How do we change that? So that's what I drilled down on. I'm a worker, so I took on new things. I would always say, to our healthcare agency director, if you need me to do something, let me know. I'm here. I can help, And that's just my philosophy in life.
We're in the next segment, we'll talk about your leadership philosophy, management philosophy. But what do you think was the greatest skill set? And you said you're a worker, so maybe that's it. But what allowed you to move forward? What do you think was the key that you moved forward so quickly, and today you find yourself over the whole county?
I think it's probably a couple of things. I think one, and it's interesting because it sounds counterintuitive when I say it. I was raised by, my grandfather, and growing up, he used to have this funny saying, and I didn't understand it then, but he used to always say, "You're not worth a nickel." He used to always say it, and he'd say, "You're my hip pocket, but you're not worth a nickel." And he'd say it from the pulpit, and it was just like a running joke, right? And it sounds counterintuitive because I was raised to be extremely modest, right? You don't think too highly of yourself. Don't think you're more than, like, that's ingrained in me.
Humility, yes.
And so, it's sort of, it's counterintuitive though, because we're in a world, in a society where you're just supposed to be like, I'm the best. I'm here. You're waiting for me. And it's like, oh, that's not, that just goes against everything of who I am. But I think my humility, I think my ability to show without speaking that I can do this, I can dig in, I can learn something, I can learn it quickly, and then I'm going to represent you the best way I can. And I think relationships, I'm a relationship builder.
Okay.
That foundationally, that's who I am. I believe in relationships, getting to know someone, understanding them, and not just sort of checking the box, right, of, okay, I know your kids' names, I know what school they go to, but like, how are you? Like,
Right.
really, how are you doing?
Right.
And so I think the combination of those variables had a lot to do with it.
That's outstanding. Thank you for sharing that. And she's Dr. Sevet Johnson, and I'm Byron K. Ward. And we want to remind you that Oxnard and Central Coast residents join Community Advocacy Coalition 993 FM and Oxnard College for our biggest fundraising event of the year. The Greg Ward Studio Naming and Benefit Concert is on November 12th at 3 p.m. It's at the Oxnard Performing Arts Building on the campus at Oxnard College. Tickets are on sale now at 99THREEFMconcert.ticketsauce.com. And don't miss the concert of the year, featuring performances by local artists including House Arrest Band, Fundi Lejean, Cedric Ross, First Lady Danielle Keys, E. Smooth, Jazzy, DJ Floyd Events, and many others. And it's hosted by Sade Champagne. And that's 99.3 FM's largest fundraiser of the year. So start buying tickets now before they are sold out. Dr. Johnson, please give us a profile of your new job. How would you characterize the challenge you have?
Well, it's dynamic. Again, over 10,000 employees. The County of Ventura is the second largest employer in the county. And we provide critical services. At the core of what the county does is health and human services, public safety and infrastructure. That's the core of what we do. So most things that we do every day in some way, the county, get in your car and you're driving on a road. You turn on your water. We've just come out of a pandemic. We now have a declared health emergency about monkeypox. Any public information and education and warnings about those critical things happening in our community, especially in our communities of color, that's coming from the county. So providing absolutely vital services now more than ever, right? With all the last few years that we've been dealing with the pandemic and now monkeypox, which we hope does not get to that level of COVID, right?
Right.
So the job is dynamic. Not only are you working with the agency heads of the 27 different departments, you're overseeing a massive budget, $2.7 billion, critical funding, and it's braided funding. So it's not just coming from one funding stream. You've got federal dollars, you've got state dollars, you've got local dollars, you've got grants coming in. You have different time cycles that you have to be aware of. And don't forget, you have audits for all the money that you're getting.
Yes.
You have audits for all of it because there's checks and balances and internal controls that have to be there to make sure that we're doing our part, and the state monitors, the feds monitor, our grant agencies monitor. So there's a great deal to always look at, to understand, and to learn. With that, we have some great people and great teams to ensure that all this happens. But at the end of the day, the buck stops with me. So it's
like
going
that.
to be, it is. I mean, that's the reality. I remember 8th grade, Washington, you go down, to the Capitol and you go to the Treasury Department and they had a shirt and I bought one. It was a green shirt. At back of it, the buck stops with me. That's my reality. And I'm okay with that.
That is a sound approach, a sound philosophy, and because you have that awesome level of responsibility, the Ventura Star lists the salary for your position at $335,554 annually.
Mm-hmm.
That likely makes you the highest paid African American in a public entity in the region, male or female.
I honestly hadn't thought of that.
Well, you're focused on doing the work.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought of that, but wow.
Yeah, your your appointment and the role you're in, I think should be acknowledged in all the aspects, because you're going to be challenged, across the board, particularly as a person of color, as a female. There are going to be numerous challenges, and I'm sure you can share some stories already, since you've been in county government since 2006 or not? 2009. So I understand that's something that you're going to have, that you've probably already dealt with, and you're going to, it's going to accelerate likely. It's going to impact you at a higher level. Can you comment on that?
I'll say I've been extremely active in our county's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. In 2020, after Mr. Floyd was killed, I was approached to really engage with the leadership of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. And I did so because I understood the time. I understood where we were at. And we did a panel. We did a couple of panels, and it was just for staff. And we talked about challenges that people of color face in society, in our county, in our current roles, right? Because it was other agency directors and heads, and we were, and I'm a very private person, but we were pretty real, and we talked about, and I remember one of the things I talked about was that I had been in a meeting, and it was just a typical meeting. And at some point, and I don't even know what it was, but I looked around, and I realized I was the only person of color, and I was the only woman in the room. And there's like 10 people in this room. And I don't know what it was about that moment that made me become aware of that dynamic. But what I will tell you is that after that, when that happened, I would point it out. And it wouldn't be admonishing, or it would just be stating the fact, I acknowledge that I'm the only woman of color in this room. And I recognize that, and I would even bring my age into it. And I would say something like, it's an honor to be at this table, but I want to acknowledge that we need to look at who else should be here, right?
Yes.
We need to make sure that if we're making decisions for communities, that we should represent those communities. They should be at the table, right?
Excellent.
So that's one of the best examples I can give you that has really driven me since that day, and driven my work with all of my DEI efforts, and has really, as I look at, and people keep saying, what's your focus going to be? And there's going to be a lot of things I have to focus on. So I can't say 1, 2, 3 things. It's not that simple. But I think 2 of the major lenses that I will be looking through, and I think it's impossible not to, with what we're facing right now in our current society, is a lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a lens of sustainability in terms of our climate and our world. For, I want my grandkids to have water, right? I want them to have clean air to breathe. I also want them to be able to get a job with not just a living wage, but a thriving wage. And so working on economic development and how that impacts our communities of color, it's critically important to me. More than that, it's looking at our education system and talking and working with our education partners and understanding what are the programs that we should be bringing to our county so that we're feeding some of the high wage industries that we have here, and talking to our business partners and understanding, so what is your forecast for the next 10, 20, 30 years for this industry? And then going back to our education partners and saying, okay, so this is what I'm hearing from our business folks, and what can we do to have programming so that our residents here don't have to go to another county to get education, and then we hope and pray that they come back, right?
Right.
Because
right.
that's what happens. People leave to go to school, and then they may come back, but they may not. And we want to make sure that Ventura County is thriving in 20 years and 30 years and 40 years, because everything that we're doing here, and everyone plays a role. I was on the phone with one of our community, a very vocal community activist and advocate last night, and I was saying, look, you play a vital role, and I want you to hold me accountable. Likewise, I play a role, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And what we're doing now, it's not for us. It's for our kids. It's for our grandkids. It's for our future generations. And that's what we all have to agree on and move forward on with a common goal.
That's so powerful, because one of the things I wanted to make sure our listeners were aware of, that prior to Dr. Johnson's appointment as the regular permanent CEO of the county, she assumed the interim tag in March of this year. And I wanted to ask you how, in only those 5 months or so, that you were able to, out of 200 candidates, that you were able to impress the supervisors to the extent that you were unanimously selected and approved.
You just said that, and I just got chills. You know, I literally haven't soaked this in, so I'm going to have to take some time to process. But, you know, I just, you know, I came in as me. I just came in as Sevet. I asked about priorities, asked about key projects, asked about, you know, what are your expectations of me? I communicate. Communication is just the bedrock of everything that I do. I don't believe in doing things on the side. I was very open, very transparent. If I don't know something, I'll acknowledge that. Like, I don't know the answer right now, but I'm going to find out, and I'll get back and follow up as soon as I get it. I listened. I did a lot of listening my first few weeks, just hearing from people, understanding people, understanding things that, you know, folks had frustrations or concerns about. And, you know, I just worked. I dug in. I read a lot. I like to read, so I had all kinds of briefings and newspapers and background information to dig into, to understand what had been going on, because many things I had to sort of jump in the middle. And there had been months or even years sometimes on conversations on different projects that I had to get up to speed in literally overnight, because in that position you can't say, oh, well, it's just my first month, so I don't know, so let me, you can't do that. Like, that's just not acceptable. So there were a lot of sleepless nights where I just stayed up all night reading and understanding and researching things, so that the next day I was prepared to ask questions, to dig in, to understand the why of what we were doing and how we were doing it, to propose solutions, did a lot of research, you know, because we're doing things and we don't have to, you know, create every wheel. It's looking at what are they doing in other regions, other states, and understanding what are different approaches that have been taken to bring a fresh perspective, right? And that's all I did.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's your CEO of the county. Those are powerful statements that you've shared with us, and you're kind of giving a little glimpse of how you attained the level that you've attained. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, you talked a little bit. I usually take a break here, but I'm going to let you take a break. But I have a question regarding your future. You talked about a little bit about your vision for the future in your current role. Can you expand on that in terms of how you personally want to implement that vision, what you see as the scope of your tasking in your role as CEO?
So I'll start by saying, you know, I got appointed this week, and I haven't had time to sit down with my team and do visioning. So I wouldn't share anything here, but what I can say is I feel like some of the things that I believe I need to do, we've started, and that will continue. So I talked about being relational.
So that started in those first 5 months.
Well, it did.
And you were in the interim role.
Yeah, because I don't
Wow.
believe in just sitting on my hands.
Wow.
I didn't think they wanted a seat warmer. I thought they wanted someone to come in and do the job.
Obviously.
And so I didn't come in and just warm the seat. I was pretty active, and there were things where, people would say, well, we have options, or, do you want to hold off and wait for the permanent to come, or do you want to just deal with it? And I'm like, well, let's just deal with it, right? I don't want to, stack up all these things for the next person and they have all these things that are just waiting for them. Like, if we need to deal with something, let's deal with it. Let's make rational decisions. Let's make fact-based decisions and things that we can justify and it feels like it's the right thing to do. And let's move forward, and we'll take it as far as we can, and that next person can pick it up.
Now, in implementing that, just touch briefly on the CEO's office and your direct reports. They're going to be the key persons to help you implement this vision.
Right. So we have an assistant CEO, Mr. Mike Pettit. We have a CFO, Ms. K. Mann. We have an assistant CEO who's also the head of our human resources department, which is Mr. Sean Otten. So those are the people that I work with absolutely every day, day in, day out, all day. Those are, my right and left hands, literally. So you got the budget, right? I'm in her office all the time because, again, I take a very hands-on approach of let's dig in. And, I came in the end of March. And so what happens in June? The county budget. And so, again, I'm right, I'm at the tail end of the budget development. They've already had all the meetings with all the different agencies, and boom, I'm here.
Now, you were a part of that in your previous role,
Yeah,
though, right?
right.
For
my department.
Yes.
But there's 20, there's
Yes.
27 full agencies.
Yes.
We also had to do our rating, our trans rating. So literally the beginning of June, we're meeting with Moody's and Standard & Poor to present our credit presentation to them to get our rating. That's a pretty big deal, right? Because
Yes,
that
it is.
impacts our credit rating, impacts our ability to borrow. It's pretty significant. And so we're meeting with them and, going through presentations and answering questions, hard questions. And, I'm like, literally start at the end of March and it's first week of June and this is what we're doing. So I went all in. I wasn't timid. I wasn't shy. It was, I'm here and I'm doing the job. This is the job I've been called to do for such a time as this. Thinking of Esther, I paraphrased it, but
Yes.
right? And let's go. And that's what it did.
Outstanding. Now, we're approaching the end of our hour, and I could keep on going and do 2 hours.
I told you I'm a talker.
But that's awesome. What you're sharing with us. You gave us some information about your foundation and how you approach your work. You said you're a big reader. What is the last or most important book that you've read recently?
Well, the last book that I've read is Never Split the Difference. I can't remember the author. It's about negotiation. The most significant book that I've read. Oh, that's a hard one. And
we're talking career because, of course, many folks might mention the Bible.
No, I'm talking.
Yes.
I would probably say Good to Great. I can't remember the author, but it's a red book. It's a pretty, most people know it's Good to Great. And it talks about, who's on your bus and who's your bus driver.
Okay.
Metaphorically, right?
Yes.
Who's on your team. who's driving your team? Who's leading that? And do you have the right person? It's funny because they talk about, there's an analogy in there, and it talks about the fox and the hedgehog. And it talks about the fox being cunning and fast and always, trying to weasel his way into some kind of a deal. And then you got the hedgehog who's slow and methodical and strategic and looks like they're like, for lack of better words, quote unquote, sleeping, right? But at the end of the day, it's the hedgehog who's sort of, victorious, because the hedgehog is the one who's like focused and is like, I'm determined, and I'm that's my goal, and I'm going there. No matter the diversion, I'm getting there. And so I've likened myself to the hedgehog. And it's funny, I read the book before I interviewed for the behavioral health director position. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm the hedgehog. And the day before I interviewed, my daughter, we went to the Moore Park Zoo with her class. And it's a teaching zoo.
At Moore Park College.
And they had the hedgehog. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's me. I'm the hedgehog. And so literally, it's funny, my friends know, but like, I'm the hedgehog. Like, that's me. I'm slow, I'm methodical, and people probably think I'm sleeping metaphorically, right? Because I'll listen. I'm quick to listen, slow to talk, very slow to be angered. But that's just sort of my approach.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And of course, I wanted to touch on the element of your education related to the psychological assessment and how that has prepared you. When we have people on the show, almost every show when I talk to business people, they talk about the numbers and the metrics, and of course I'm sure that's been a significant training that has allowed you to transition into the pure financial level of responsibility you have. $2.5 billion.
2.7.
She's correcting me. 2.7 plus. So as we close, share with us what has been your single greatest challenge or failure that you've experienced that has helped to prepare you for the challenge you have as CEO of the County of Ventura.
I'm going to do two. I can't do it one, but I have two really quick. One is in behavioral health, we have these funds called MHSA, Mental Health Services Act dollars, and you get these dollars and they're split into these different pots that you have to spend them, and there's time cycles and all that. And so it's really about figuring out, how do you leverage those funds? They're the funds of last resort. How do you braid that funding with other dollars to really make them last? And looking at how do you ensure the longevity and sustainability of how you use those dollars. And that's something that, it's funny, I keep referencing MHSA, as we're looking at our budget now, because you're thinking about the general fund, right? General fund dollars, to me, that's funding of last resort. That is the last resort. It's like, what else can we do? Let's get creative. Like, how do we leverage? How do we match? Instead of using, if someone's saying, well, I got a $2 million general fund ask, it's like, oh no, so let's back up and let's talk about what are the grants you can go to, or how do you maximize this Medi-Cal funding, and let's bring that down to 1 million instead of 2. Like, seriously. And so it's really of, how do we best maximize our funding dollars, especially our general fund, because that's sacred. It really is. It's sacred. The second thing I would say is that working with our community partners, behavioral health, I did that a lot. March, I just hit the floor with that. Someone would say, I want to meet. That's how we met, right?
Public and private partners.
Let's do this. Yes, because we need to partner with everyone. The county can't do all of this alone. It's so critical that we are engaging everyone. Yes. All of our different industries, publicly and privately. And so that's been a huge commitment of mine, and something that, they've been doing it. I just want to make sure I continue to do that and enhance that as much as possible. Well,
thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Dr. Sevet Johnson, CEO, County of Ventura.
Thank
She
you.
is your new leader in the county. And we're so honored to have you share this hour with us this morning. It's been a real pleasure. It's been very informative. And we thank you.
Well, I thank you for the honor. I thank you for inviting me. It's been absolute joy to spend this time with you. Thank you.
Great. And we're reminding you that Byron K. Ward presents Business Leadership with Action, is produced and underwritten by Action Human Technologies, LLC. Our program is broadcast live from the studios of 99.3 FM, KJBU in Oxnard, California, at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, and streaming live on 99threefm.com, and on demand for audio at 99threefm.com, and video at byronkward.com. We're on all social media at Byron K. Ward.